Coffee time with Officer Fox. Screw in, screw out.
Again, I was a brand new officer. And when you're new, a student officer, you have to pay the price. You got to, all the stuff that no one wants to do, you get to do. So there was a prolific burglar up in the North End, and he had committed numerous occupied burglaries. He was going in while the people were asleep, and a lot of times it was females. And one of the North End detectives, officers, he's been looking for this guy. He was sitting out for hours and hours on surveillance, hoping to catch up with this burglar. Well, one night he actually catches him coming off a balcony, and he sees him. It ends up in a foot pursuit. The guy makes it into his car, and then there's a vehicle pursuit. And again, it was up in the North End, and this kid was running down a windy 4-lane highway at over 100 miles an hour, and he stacked it up into a telephone pole. And the telephone pole dropped back across him and broke his neck and back. Not to the point of where he was paralyzed, but where he was in really poor condition. So anyway, the detective, they took him to the hospital, and again, I got sent to the hospital to guard the prisoner until he could be booked into jail. So again, I'm new to all this, and Harborview is one of the major emergency centers in Washington State. It's a major trauma hospital. All the new doctors train there. Their emergency room is gunshots, car accidents. If you ever have a severe traumatic injury, you want to go to Harborview because they really do have the best care for emergency. But you don't want to get left there because they also take in the homeless and just anybody that walks through the door, the drug addicts. It's just on a Friday, Saturday night, we called it Harbor Zoo because it is. It's an absolute zoo. You'll see stuff and hear stuff that you would never, ever believe. So anyway, I get up there, and this kid is, again, in the emergency room. And I'm in the emergency room because I'm curious. So I want to see what's going on. And they're going to put a halo around his head, which is a metal brace. And then the brace has a spine on it, and it runs down your back, and they attach it to a belt in your hips. It was basically to immobilize him because his back was broken. So I'm watching again, and again, I'm curious. And so this metal ring that they put in your head, I didn't realize it, but they actually screw it into your skull. And again, no anesthetic, just because they don't know what he has done before, or if he's on drugs, so they just can't give it to him, but they've got to get him stabilized. So anyway, they place this halo on his head, and then they pull out some screws. They look like screws from Home Depot, and they grabbed him. I remember looking right that it was a DeWalt drill, and they put it on his head, and they marked it out with some permanent mark band, and they put the halo on his head, and they screwed it into his skull. Again, the screams were unimaginable. I'm watching. I'm like, this is absolute insanity. This is the best we can do? A DeWalt drill and screws? All right. So anyway, they get him in there. He's screaming. They get it all lined up, and they're finished. Doc comes in, takes a look. They're looking at it. They aren't finished. The halo's crooked. It's not sitting on his head correctly. So what do you think they do? They put the drill in reverse, and they reverse the screws out of his skull. And then they remeasure, they readjust, they pick new holes for his skull, and they re-screw the halo back in with the DeWalt drill. To me, it was interesting, but crazy. Again, sometimes just desserts. I didn't really care if this guy ever got charged with any of his burglaries ever, because he'd been punished, and it was unbelievable.
Well, that's the second episode with Officer Fox. Hope you're enjoying it.